Alrighty, folks, it is such an honor and a privilege to speak with Anna Kelly each and every week. We have actually opened it up to the school community. Right now, shout out to Mark, the financial firefighter. He is here live. How you doing, Mark? Oh,
Good. Glad to be here.
excellent, man. Well, we're just going to get rolling, Anna and I. And Anna, I want to talk to you about something that you and I have talked about in passing a couple of times, and that is Americans are in serious trouble. Delinquency surge, debt at a record high. These are things that we hear about all the time, but what would be your recommendation to folks in our community who are action takers and really want to move forward?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you've always got to be able to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And when you have big shifts in the economy, like what we're seeing, years of inflation, signs of recession on the horizon, maybe even worse, stagflation, you've got to say, okay, am I prepared for these things if they happen? And the number one thing that people need to be prepared is really to have sufficient reserves or savings before you go out and invest so that you can weather a layoff. So, I recommend, and most financial advisors would recommend, the goal is to get to 6 months of expenses saved. I didn't like to do that early on. I wanted to invest every penny that I had. But in the great financial crisis, I had some emergencies happen that I didn't have the cash to pay for as a landlord, which forced me to take on credit card debt. So save up at least 3 months expenses, ideally 6 months expenses. Some people say income. You don't necessarily have to save that much in your income, but your living expenses, you should have 6 months, 3 to 6 months saved when you're heading into a downturn.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things. First and foremost, these stats are scary. No doubt they're obviously shared because they want to create inaction and fear. But I think there's something that you and I know because we've been through a couple of these that if you're younger, maybe this is your first nasty recession. Uh, there's a lot of opportunity, right? Again, we're currently at 3.9% unemployment. Let's just pretend we go to 5%, which would undoubtedly mean millions of people laid off. It would be horrible, be bad. But that also means 95% of folks are still working. And a
Yes.
lot of a lot of people miss that. The other thing that we are seeing, and we'll talk about this, I think, in video number 3, is folks that have been here before, like Ken McElroy, they're gearing up right now. Right? Ken McElroy put out a video yesterday about, hey, I'm going to buy 500 million bucks in real estate. I'm going to upgrade my portfolio. I'm going to make my portfolio younger because the big boys are distracted with all this debt resets and all of that, and all this other stuff is too big for the new folks. So he's going to be this little speedboat and go pick off things. So yes, recessions are scary. Yes, delinquencies, debt, scary. But don't put your head in the sand. There's going to be some amazing opportunities, right?
Absolutely. And historically, when you're at the bottom is when you make the most money because you buy low and then you ride the next expansion period in an economic cycle and watch your rents and your values typically go up. Now, there's some important things to do in terms of identifying the right types of investments and the right types of properties in the right locations that are going to help you do the best, when that economic expansion happens. But absolutely. Whenever, Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So a lot of people jump in at the peak of a cycle, like we saw over the last couple of years, and overpay, and then things start to come down and they start to lose money. When you have the bottom, rather than being fearful, you need to be prepared and you need to set yourself up to be stable so that you can then take your excess and go invest when other people are running away because your competition's gone. Most of your competition is going to be very afraid and say it's a recession, it's too risky. Your banks are going to dry up, some lending. They're going to give you no answers. And that's when the really resilient start to do well and say, I'm going to figure out another way to get it done, but I'm going to get it done and take advantage of the opportunity to buy properties, hopefully much cheaper than you were able to before.
Yeah, I think a lot of life is about understanding when to play defense and when to play offense. And I think you're right. Heading into a recession, heading into scary times, you gotta have a decent defense. You got to have the 3 to 6 months reserves. You got to understand those things. You don't want to leave yourself open to get hurt. But once you've done that, it's about the offense. You get
Yeah.
wealthy with offense. You don't get wealthy with defense, right? Defense makes sure you don't get out of the game, but you've got to be ready to take offense. And something you and I've talked about for years is, I forget the exact saying, but you'll remember it. Something like do this and this while you expand your means. I forget the saying.
Yeah, like I've always say, learn to live below your means
Uh,
while you work to expand your means. And that should be always, but especially when you're starting out. I can't expand my means and go after $500,000 worth of property or, $500 million worth of property like McElroy if if I'm not already living below my means so that I have discretionary income that I can use to go invest. So, when I talk about living below your means, if you're living check to check and you're already racking up credit card debt, I know this is a show about real estate, but I'm going to tell you, don't get another credit card or buy something you don't understand to get yourself into more debt to make an extra $100 a month. I'm going to say first, get your house in order. Transfer your high interest stuff to low interest rates, whether that's a HELOC or 0% financing or a personal loan or whatever. Get your debt payments under control. Take a real look at your spending, and are you blowing money? Are you one of the 66% of Americans that are living check to check, racking up your credit card debt and starting to fall behind on payments? If you are, real estate is not going to make that better necessarily. It's going to exacerbate your current habits. So you're
yeah,
just going to have more property, more debt with the same current habits. You'll get in trouble. So you have to learn to manage your money well on your own so that you can then manage your properties well. So the defense, it's not so much about always playing defense, but I always want to be in a position that my needs are met, that my real needs are met. And then I've got extra left over that I can then go buy another house, another 4 unit, another 10 unit, another 50 unit, whatever it may be. But at all times, I'm being very careful to have some savings to weather,
yeah.
a recession, for example, and building up that excess savings that I can use to go invest. So both are really important. You can't get rich by just saving money. We had a great
Mhm.
show and debate on that, but you can also lose your shirt by not learning how to save money. So
Yeah.
both are important. And even today, being a multimillionaire, we live well below our means, Michael, well below our means. We have more savings than what we've ever had. So that when there is big opportunity, I can take advantage of that opportunity. And it's not just all blown and living check to check. Even a lot of wealthy people live check to check. And so
Yeah.
they may have good incomes, but they don't necessarily grow a strong net worth.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about credit cards. I read a scary stat yesterday. They'll be close, but not exact. I think 15% of Gen Z's credit cards are maxed. I think Generation X, my generation, your generation is like 9%, and baby boomers like 5%, something like that. Well, let's say you have somebody that's, got a $10,000 credit limit. It's run up to the hilt. It's paying, the average today is almost 21% interest. Um, what do you tell? I mean, I tell people to focus on paying that off because that's like a 21% return. Is that how you see it as well?
Absolutely. Because the reality is most deals today, and you can't ever say all, but I think I'm pretty comfortable saying most deals today are not going to generate you a 20% cash on cash return, in the first year. You're going to have to put money into it in order to get it to potentially do that. So it's possible, but most deals are not going to do that. So if I'm making 6 or 8% cash on cash while I'm paying 21% on a credit card, I'm falling behind, so even that extra rental income. So you always want to get rid of your high interest debt first. And one of the tricks that I would recommend to just about anybody, I don't know anybody that I wouldn't recommend this. I would call your credit card company and ask them for an increase in your line. And while you have good credit, hopefully you have good credit, you might be able to get a line increase. Because what happens, Michael, a lot of people don't realize too, they rack up their credit card debt and they think, I can make the payment. But if you're maxed out on your available credit on your credit cards, your
Mhm.
credit score can tank seriously, 60,
Yeah.
70 points. And for people that say your credit score doesn't matter, I don't agree with that. My credit score
Mhm.
being really good allows me to get yes answers all the time with banks. Sure, you can use other people's money, you can do DSCR loans, but your credit does matter. So if you're maxed out, you want more credit available. You can either do that by asking for a line of credit increase on your existing credit card, or try to open a new low introductory balance credit card. Now, I want to be very careful. I'm not telling you to rob Peter to pay Paul and keep doing this and then rack up the next credit card. But if you have a credit card at 21% and it's at $10,000, and you can get a new credit card that'll give you a 0% for 18 months, you might have a 2 or 3% fee, but now you're paying off that debt, that high interest debt at a low interest rate, so you can make a lot more progress in paying that down. Then you get out of the habit of putting stuff on credit cards. So it's really a stopgap for you to just get that interest rate lower, get a little higher a credit available. It'll boost your credit score as well, though, having more available than what you've used. So if you have two cards with 10,000, but you have 20,000 available, your credit utilization is now 50% instead of 100%. Your credit score will be much higher, which will help you as an investor when you find the properties you want to buy to have a better credit score. Because that credit card being maxed out could bring your score so much lower that it's harder. Your loans, if you do qualify for them on your next property you want to buy, maybe at a much higher interest rate just because you have one maxed out credit card. And it really can make a 70-point swing in some people's scores depending on how much credit you have available.
Yeah, I think that's great. One of the things I wanted to ask in this segment, you and I have been very open with folks that part of our journey was a bunch of sacrifice, right? Live below our means. We did less than our peers at the time. And I just want to ask you, was the sacrifice worth it? Right? Was that 10 years worth it?
Absolutely. And if I lost everything, I would do it again. I sold my big house in Texas. I downsized, moved in with my in-laws with two babies for a year, a little over a year, bought a 4-unit house, hacked it. But we were able to live below our means. And thankfully, Michael, we did that just before the GFC. So when we had the worst recession in history, other than the Great Depression, when our business income was struggling, when patients couldn't come to my husband anymore, they'd have to pop a pill because they couldn't afford their, co-pays. And when AIG was almost going under, our needs were met because we house hacked and our tenants paid our mortgage, our taxes, and our insurance. And then we had a couple other rental properties bringing in that income. So both living below our means and having the few rental properties that we had at that point to really bring in that extra income, the combination of those things together is what allowed us to survive during that really rough couple of years. But it also allowed me to have some excess income, even through all of that, to start using to then go buy another property. So the sacrifices for a decade of 70 to 80-hour work weeks, hustling, running a business, having our job, house hacking, buying rental property. It was the best decision we ever made and led to where we are today, no doubt.
Yeah, a lot of folks are in this journey, I always say the first 5 years suck, right? It's where you don't have scale, you're still making mistakes. You realize that people lie to you, people steal, people don't pay rent, all these things, water heaters
Right.
break. Um, but I want our story, right? We're real people. We
Yeah.
both got 5 years of history talking together on your playlist. It is absolutely worth it. And
Mm.
I would do it again. If I had to start today at 51, I would do essentially the same thing. I would say that I would typically buy newer, I would try to buy newer homes, right? I wouldn't go for
Yes.
the lower end, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do anything different. I would just, start one at a time.
Absolutely. And buying that one rental at a time, when you start out with not much, you're going to have to get used to no answers from a bank sometimes. And
Yep.
as the economy gets, potentially worse or we have a recession, credit and banks are going to get even more tight. They're going to tell you real estate is risky and you don't have enough reserves and you don't have, enough income coming in or whatnot. So the other piece of advice that I would have done differently if I had known better is I would really start learning about seller financing and I'd really start networking and trying to find private lenders. Now, we do have hard money lenders and DSCR lenders, and some of those may go by the wayside if you have another bad recession. But learning to use other people's money is really important. And so when you're living check to check and you're paying down your credit cards and you're saying, I know if I could just buy another rental property, I'd have a little more, but the banks are saying no. Start preparing yourself now if you're in that position to find private money lenders or JV partners that'll partner with you. Maybe you bring the work, you bring the experience, you're the one doing the locating of the properties, buying them, renovating them, and you're using a partner's money. Don't be afraid to partner and take a little bit of a little bit rather than nothing of
Mhm.
nothing.
Mhm.
So finding other people's money, you don't have to do it all on your own money. In
Right.
fact, during the GFC, I've told this story before, but we had $700,000 in business startup debt. I didn't have
Mhm.
a zero net worth. I had a negative 700,000 net worth. Now I had a
Ouch.
good job. We had businesses. We had some property income coming in. But that was a real reality. And so it was slow going that first few years because every bank said no. And I had to learn to take 9 no's until I found the 10th
Mhm.
yes, and then start partnering with other people's money, networking that I'm buying properties. I'm looking for partners, equity partners that don't want to do the work, but have a need to make a return on their investment. So other people's money, being really resilient, not taking no for an answer, and figuring it out. Everyone can do it.
Mhm.
Even if you have credit card debt, you just might have to do it a different way and be really cautious and careful and slow and patient with yourself when you first get started, because then it starts to snowball. And the
Mhm.
great reality about recessions, at least historically, Michael, is they're fairly short lived.
Yeah.
So even if we're in a recession now, which I think we are, even if it got worse, usually they last 10 to 18 months. 18 is a long recession. Then you've got a couple years of recovery. Credit starts getting a little bit easier. More people want to invest. They're not so afraid. So, don't think that the way it is now is the way it's going to be forever. So you give up and stop doing the work because you think it's hard. Like, choose your hard. It's
Mhm.
worth it. It's going to be harder over the next couple years, but you're going to have significant opportunity, maybe more so than the last couple years where it was
Yeah.
really a seller's market and you had bidding wars. Now your competition's gone. So there's always positive to find in every market. You just have to get really creative and do the work and figure it out.
I love this. I love the fact that we have so many millionaire repeat guests because we get to see what they're actually doing in their business. You just got a seller financed house. The lumberjack just got a seller financed fourplex. Casey just wrote a seller financing deal yesterday. So again, seller financing is out there. It's possible. I do think the next 18 months will be harder than the last 2 years, but that's a good thing if you know what
Right.
you're doing, if you're in the right community, if you're around people that are doing this, you got to get around people that are doing it. Stop interacting with your friends who know nothing about real estate. They're the ones that
Absolutely.
are going to look at the headlines and go, "Oh my God, the world is ending." Blah. No, get around people that
Absolutely.
are doing it.
And for me, that house I bought, I actually offered seller financing, but he didn't take it. But that's okay because I had a backup private lender. So I called a guy who I know is a
Oh,
private
that's
lender
right.
and he's lent to me before. And I said, hey, I can pay you more than what you'd get parking your money in a 2-year CD or a 2-year treasury, backed by real estate. Are you still in the market for private lending? He's like, for you, yes. So
Yeah, there you
6%.
go.
6% interest only made me cash flow almost 8 or $900 a month. So
Score.
if the seller says no, find a private lender and use
Exactly.
their money. And I'm doing this even though I have my own money because it makes my money go further when I can help other people using their money make a good return and create a win-win for me, the seller, and a private lender.
Yep. At the end of the day, folks, the headlines are scary. Delinquencies are surging, debt is high, but stop reading the headlines. Do the work, get in the right communities, realize that you own your stuff. You can't fix stupid, so don't worry about everybody else. Just take care of your house and your family. Anna, where can people find you?
Right, you can find me here on my playlist on your channel almost every week over the last couple of years. Go back and listen to some of our previous shows. There's a lot of great stuff there. You can find me on social media at Anna Kelly, REI Mom. And if you're interested in real estate coaching, consulting, or deal review, you can find me at annakellyinvesting.com.
You're amazing. Thank you.